Hi, I'm Trisha at Club Scrap. Thank you so much for joining me for this Podium book stand homework session. I hope that you find this little precursor helpful, and it might be just a nice way to dive in together for the official assembly workshop of the project, having a couple of these steps completed. And again, whether you're using our Roost page kit that we're transforming into the project or some other kit, you can just substitute the papers of your choice to make all that happen. But again, most of you probably have the full Roost entire project kit ready to go. So this is the book we're going to be making. And it involves some trimming, some gluing, and we're just going to do that trimming part today and just a little bit of the prep work. So I'm going to show you what supplies you'll be needing, and then let's get started. So I have my project out of the package right here, and the truth is we're not going to be using most of this stuff right now. So I'm going to have you set aside like the wire, the foam brush. Keep this little piece of mat board handy, but all the heavier boards can be set aside. Then things like the goodies, like the little doodads and thingamabobs, the photo mats, charms, all the ribbon, you can set that aside. So that basically all we have left here is some paper. I did pull out some bookbinding glue just to show you, you will be needing this glue. It's not included in the kit because a lot of you already have some, but if you don't have a decent enough amount of glue in a bottle, you're gonna need that. Mine here is virtually empty. So I too need to pick up some more bookbinding glue for myself. Now I'm using a Fiskars guillotine style trimmer, and this one has a self-sharpening blade, and it's capable of cutting through this board just fine. And I'm also staying organized with my accordion pocket file. Now the unique thing about this is you're doing the work ahead of time, and you may want to, if you have one, you may want to use it in the meantime. So if that's the case, I recommend like some envelopes or maybe a couple of page protectors you can stuff the different steps into so that you can use this for other projects in the meantime. So otherwise I'm using A, B, C, and D to keep ourselves organized for the different phases of assembly of the Podium book. For example, pocket A is going to contain everything needed for the outside cover unit, this whole piece here. And then in pocket B, it will be the inside covers, C will be the pages, and D will be decorating items. Now I've got my instructions here as well. So if you take a look, I've got some little handwritten notes there, and you would want to do that too if you're using something other than what I'm using. This helps me keep track of what letter I've assigned each color in the paper provided in the kit. Typically we have 2 each of 6 different flavors of paper available. So each one has an assignment. And what I like to do is put the paper in the order that will be trimming it. So let's go ahead and do that. And you want to do the same even if you're substituting a different collection. So basically we're going to start out with this mat board. We're going to trim that first. And then I want you to find the 2 brick. These papers are going to end up being the outside cover wraps. There we go, 2 brick. Then we're going to grab our brown. That's going to be the outside spine covers. They're going to be brown, so you need both sheets of that. And then we need a blue metallic taupe, and this is the one that you can tell right away it's metallic and has that really cool texture on it. And then one of the rooster prints, and then one of the weather vane prints. Notice I'm putting these face down on my trimmer base. And then once again, we're going to repeat that last set of 4. So blue, metallic taupe, rooster, bing, and weather vane. Then there are 2 sheets of cut aparts, and since we're doing the homework together, I'm going to guide you through the trimming of this these 2 pieces as well. So I'm going to put those face down. And let's flip everything back over again. And we have the brick on top, and we have that mat board. So now I'm going to take my accordion pocket file. It has that little lip on the front of it, and this is something that you can make with my video guidance. I have a video workshop of this project. So I put that lip underneath the top of my trimmer base, and that holds everything vertically and makes it easy to file into the appropriate pocket. Okay, if this is your first time following along with the instructions, I just recommend, I have a visual and I have written instructions. So if you're unsure, always look at the writing first rather than the image, because sometimes you can get confused by the diagram. So just read the words and then do what the words say. So we're going to put this mat board into the trimmer at 10 inches. Now, you may seem like a little scary because this is so thick. So what I really need you to do is make sure it's level at the top here, push firmly on this clear bar to hold that, and then just bring the blade down firmly. Then slide over to 6 inches, push down, and slice. Okay, so this piece goes in pocket C. This is going to end up being a jig to help us with our binding. Then these other 2 pieces actually form the easel at the back of the podium book stand. This is what this is, the podium basically, and both pieces go in pocket A. Now I'm going to take 1 sheet of the brick, and grain direction matters, so I'm going to walk you through that. So see the arrow on the diagram here, it's pointing up and down. So if I take the paper at an edge and study the behavior of the paper, if I wiggle it a little bit, I'm just studying how flexible it seems. Then to compare, I'll just grab an adjacent edge. That's way more stiff. This is way more flexible, and I want the paper to flex easily from top to bottom as I place it in the trimmer. And we're going to trim at 10. Stabilize always, and there's that 10 inches. I'm level at the top here. Then rotate the large piece you just created, and we're going to cut it in half at 6. All right, these are the 2 outside cover wraps. I'm going to place them both in pocket A. And then this piece can be used later for anything. So all of the decorating stuff is going to go in pocket D, D for decorating. Now I'm going to take the other brick. This time the grain direction doesn't matter since the paper will never be folded. I'm going to place it in the trimmer at 7 3/4. So if you're doing a 3/4 thing and you're newer to the measuring thing, every column is a 1/4 inch. So 7, 7 1/4, 7 1/2, 7 3/4. Stabilizing every time. Then rotate this piece, and we're going to cut it sort of a couple of weird measurements here. First is 9 3/4. That one's pretty easy. So 9 3/4. Now 4 7/8. Don't freak out. Find halfway between 4 3/4 and 5 is 4 7/8. It's that little guy right there. So 4 7/8. 2 pieces the same size going into pocket B. These are the inside covers in pocket B. This narrow strip and the larger scrap goes in D, so we'll use it later. I literally used almost everything except for a few little snippy scraps. Everything else went in to decorate my book. Now here, checking the grain now, I'm going to make sure the paper dips easily from top to bottom. I'm going to cut at 10. And rotate. And cut at 8 1/2. This goes in pocket A, this larger piece. And then this next strip, this is currently 3 1/2 by 10. We'll cut at 6 3/4. Pocket A. And then the remaining pieces go in D for decorating. The other brown, this time I want the grain, I want the paper to dip easily from left to right. So that's very stiff. This is more flexible. This is pretty heavy paper here, so that grain attention is very important. I'm going to cut at 8 1/2. Then rotate and cut at 9 1/2. And 7 3/4. This is going to be the inside spine cover here, and we're going to place this in pocket B. If you don't have the pocket, of course, it would be a pile. Then you have this narrow piece. We'll trim at 5. Pocket A. You got a scrap for D, which we'll probably end up using. And then all the rest of the pieces too. There are 2 more pieces that go in D. So again, that's everything needed for those outside covers. Now it's time to plan some pages here. So when I cut this paper in half at 6 inches, I want it dipping easily from top to bottom. So I'll just go ahead and cut at 6. And that's going to give me 2 pages, and I'm just going to set them aside for now, not in a pocket. And this next one dipping top to bottom, cut at 6 again. Set aside. Here now, it's kind of weird to turn these into pages because the grain direction might mean that you have a rooster facing the wrong way. But so if you want to change that, you could. But I'm just going to go ahead and trim this in cooperation with the grain. And if there's something, an orientation of something that I don't like, I'll just cover it with a photo mat or something. So I'm just going to go ahead and cut this at 6 inches. And then the weather vane print. Let's see where that takes us. It's kind of going to do the same thing. Now, what you could have done is have all of your pages be like, you could have done 2 blue and 2 taupe and have these 4 photo mats and decorating. That's fine, but I'm just going to do what I did when I made my original sample and set these aside. And now I have 4 more sheets that I'm going to cut into photo mats. Now, here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to take the blue and the taupe metallic at the same time. We don't need to worry about grain direction because this won't be folded. And I'm going to cut them at 10.5 and 6 1/4. Rotate the 6 1/4 inch pieces that we just made and cut at 8.5 and 4 1/4. So here we have a set of 4 photo mats that are all the same size. And then there are also these other little rectangles here. We can set all of that in pocket D. Then you have this other strip we're going to cut. It's both of them at 6 1/4. That gives me 2 more regular size photo mats and 2 shorter mats going in pocket D. Then you have the long strips also in pocket D. Basically, all of this is used for decorating. Now here, this rooster print, I'm just going to cut, place it in the trimmer right side up, and cut at 6 1/4. Rotate, and cut at 8.5 and 4 1/4. Now that gives me 2 more photo mats and a rectangle for pocket D. And then on this one, I'm just gonna wait because what I actually ended up doing was using this portion of the print to decorate the outside front cover. If you wanted to, I'll go ahead and measure what this was if you want to follow along with me. I trimmed it at 7 3/4. So with the rooster on the left, I'll go 7 3/4, and that's gonna fit perfectly on the outside of my cover. But either way, all of this stuff is going to be done at the end. So I'll put this all in pocket D for decorating again. And same thing here. I'm going to, let's see, I'm going to put it in the trimmer upside down and cut at 6 1/4. And then 8.5 after rotating 8.5 and 4 1/4. That gives me 2 more nice photo mats. A rectangle that I can use, pocket D. And then this guy I can use anywhere I want. And in fact, I used it here on the inside of my book after I trimmed a little bit off. So, I mean, it's going to be up to you how you use these, but I'm just telling you that I trimmed this out. And I guess I can just do that if you want. Let me get the measurement here. This is probably going to be, this is 7 3/4 by 4 1/4. So let's just trim it. 4 1/4 and then 7 3/4. There. Now this is ready to go to decorate the inside of your book. Nice. And I'm still going to put all this in pocket D. D is going to be packed. All right. Then we have our cut aparts. This step is completely optional. You don't need to do this with me, but I'm going to go ahead. Oh, sorry, there was a scrap there. Let's put that in D as well because I used, like I said, literally everything. Our cut aparts come with this excess past the 12-inch mark. And basically that allows you, the customer, or you, the creator, to create the perfect 12 by 12 for us. Because sometimes when we trim these on a large commercial trimmer, there's a little bit of slide that makes it less accurate than I like. So the accuracy falls on us. And what I want to do is remove that little bit from the edge So I'm trying to align that plus sign with the edge of my blade and trim it away. Now you can always go back and fine tune your cut if you're a little shy, that's fine. I do that intentionally sometimes. So I'm going to work my way around the entire print and just cut off those ends. And again, these are cut aparts. They're going to prompt you to create journaling. They're going to just help you complete your pages. And I'm just going to fine tune the last cut. What I love about my trimmer is I can take off a sliver, a literal sliver of paper to make it as accurate as possible. So I'm going to get rid of these. And I'm just going to walk you through the measurements. They're not in your instructions, but visually you can kind of tell what the nearest 1/4 inch is to separate all these pieces. So my first cut here is going to be at 11 1/4, and then 10 1/2, 8 3/4, and then all the way down to 5. I forgot to mention, you want to make sure this large image was on the left edge of your print. You're removing the border strips and the narrow elements first. Now, with a rotation, make sure those little journaling lines are on the right, and we'll cut at 10 3/4, and then, let's see, 7, just flat 7. Okay, so now I'm going to gather up the 3 elements that we created. I'm going to put them all in pocket D. D continues to grow. Then I'm going to place this next strip into the trimmer with the words keep calm and cluck on will be on the right, and I'm going to go 10 1/4, and then skip all the way down to 6 1/2, and then 5, and finally 3 1/2. Okay, I'm going to gather up these pieces, 1, 2, and 3. Put those in D, and we're done with those. Now, if you wanted to, you could take scissors and just trim around each one of these elements. When you do the little peep and the balk, those are created to fit inside the metal oval embellishments that we've provided to you to decorate your book. So again, that's all optional, but if you just cut just on the outside of that guideline, it will fit perfectly inside the oval. If you want to do that embellishing ahead of time, great, or you can do it at the end. Totally your call, but that's what I did to prepare. So I'm just going to put this in pocket D for now, but if you want to go that extra mile and get that prepped, have at it. So now keep calm and cluck on. I'm going to put this in here at 2 3/4. Now notice how I'm using my fingertip to hold the bar at 1 1/2 inches here, so I can trim that out. All right, these 2 little guys, guess where they go? Pocket D. Now we got some tags to trim out here, so make sure my Roost My Rules is on the right, and we'll cut at 9 3/4, 6 1/2, and 3 1/4. All right, now what we have here are a series of 3 little tags. Sometimes I use a craft knife, cutting mat, and ruler to create the perfect angle to remove it, or you can eyeball it on your trimmer and make sure you kind of match the margin of, it's 1/8 inch. So if you're using a grid ruler, it's 1 cube, or eyeballing, just do your best to match what you see as far as the reveal on the other sides of the tag. There's 2, and then my Roost My Rules. It's just nice to have all this prep work done so that when you get to the decorating phase, all of your efforts can be focused on just how to make that album look fantastic. All right. Okay, so these are the pieces that can also go in pocket D. And then you've got some little strips. Now, home is where the flock is, and this other one, you can trim these to fit into the space, and I'll show you more in a minute when I review the completed album again. But they're 12 inches long right now. Ultimately, you'll trim them down to fit your project. On the second sheet of cut aparts, we need to repeat the process of removing those little ends. So I'm lining up that mark And I'm actually gonna go a little shy, and then I'll fine tune that on one extra little pass where I take off that shaving. And my goal again is to end up with a nice 12 by 12. So pretty soon I can start looking over here at 12 and just make sure I have everything trimmed beautifully by taking off these little shavings and dispose of them. Here we make sure again the border strip is on your right. Live like someone left the gate open. And our first cut will be at 11. And then 10 1/4. 9 1/2. 7 3/4. 5 3/4. And 3. All right, this is our happy place. Now again, here you can see I used the top portion of this section to decorate the inside cover. So if you wanted to, you could trim this at 7 3/4 before you even put it in. If you want to follow your own muse and just hold on all of this trimming, you know, like the other prints we did earlier as well, and not do what I did, that's fine too. A lot of people want to know what I did, so that's why. This too, I ended up using it in parts. I used this on one half and used this elsewhere. Here's another 12-inch strip that can be adapted. Same here. All of these were trimmed, but we're just going to leave them so that you can make those choices as you work through the process of decorating your book. Now, if you happen to have a score pal, it does really work well to score your inside pages before you fold them. And you can decide whether or not you would like to have your prints fold inward so that when you open it, you can see the whole thing, or fold this way so you have a print, two white, and a print. Just for interest, I'm going to do one way and one the other, and that will determine how I put this into my score pal. So print side up, I'll score at 6, and then plain side up, I'll score at 6. That'll give me two different outcomes on these. Print side up, I'll score at 6, and plain side up, I'll score at 6. For these other ones, it just doesn't even matter. Just scoring these 6 by 12s in half at 6 inches. Now, when you fold these, there is a score line here that has a bump, right? So I want the bump of the score to go on the inside of the fold, and just make sure that they're nice and level, and you can go ahead and make that crease. And you can do that on all the pages that you scored. If you don't have a score pal, just skip ahead to this step. And because we are folding in cooperation with the grain, you'll be just fine. So that's why we kind of changed direction here. So here's the bump of the score line, putting the print on the inside. And here's the bump of the score line, putting the print on the outside. I don't know exactly what I did on mine, but either way, there we go. I think I actually, on my sample, I went against the grain. And because I scored, that was fine. But I don't know that all of you have a score pal, and I want to make sure that your folding is successful. If you happen to have a bone folder, you can stack everything and do all the creasing at the same time. Now, the last thing I want to do to prepare these pages to go into our book is to punch the holes that will hold them in place. So let's just take a quick peek at the finished project. Every page has a little hole here and here, and that's 3/4 of an inch from the top edge and 3/4 of an inch from the bottom edge in the fold line. It's an 1/8 inch hole that I punched with my Crop-A-Dile. So the Crop-A-Dile has two sizes. This, what size is this? 3/16, and this is 1/8. So I used the 1/8 inch hole on this and to create them. And you can do several pages at a time. If if you want to nest them together. A couple of ways you can do this. Number one, you can open a page and you can take a ruler and measure up 3/4 of an inch and make a mark here. 1, 2, 3 solid lines on my ruler. That's 3/4 of an inch. And then you can come back in and make sure you're looking at that small hole and punch it. Another thing you can do, it's very clever tool on this, is that this little slider, if it's still attached, mine tends to fall off on some of these, so don't worry about that. If it's gone, just measure. Here's a 1/2 inch on that middle line, and then you got to find 3/4. That's like a little stopper. So again, if I put it in right to the stopper, that puts me at 3/4 of an inch. So next, if I just took a couple of pages at a time, here's 3. I'm going to nest them together neatly. And I'm going to go on the 1/8 inch hole until I reach my stopper right on the line. Boom. And then flip it around and do the same thing on the other end. Another thing you could do is take one that you've measured with the ruler and just use that as a template for all the others. So no matter how you punch it, you can do several at a time. In fact, I'm going to do the remaining 4 all at the same time. Stack them neatly together, making sure those fold lines match up, and come in and just punch right through that fold. Beautiful. Now you can take all of these pages that are prepped. If you want, you can fold them individually again and file them in pocket C. And then we'll be ready to install these into the album in no time. And that's it. That's the prep. I know we did quite a bit of work together, but having all of that done ahead of time will just allow us to coast through the remaining assembly of your book. So if you have any questions in the meantime, you can reach out to us. If you need more supplies or need to figure out where to source some of these things like the trimmer or the glue, reach out and let us know. We can also get you set up with a kit to make the accordion pocket file. It's something that we use every single month with our various page kit assembly workshops and card kit assembly workshops. So when we make pages, we make 8 at a time, and when we make cards, we make 12 at a time in 3 sets of 4 cards each. So each pocket helps us stay organized with all of that as well, so we're not hunting down all the little parts and pieces. Everything's really well organized, and I think that helps us be more successful. A little bit more about those cut aparts. Remember when we just trimmed all those pieces and landed them in pocket D, those decorative elements? Every month we have a sheet of instructions that helps you turn every page kit into 8 layouts with almost no waste. And so we do have these instructions available on our website in our resources tab. All of our page kit instructions are there. And they are kit specific. I create a new set of instructions every month. So we have the diagrams very similar to what we have in the Podium book stand instructions. We just have you trim the paper differently. However, that said, all of the specific trimming instructions for those 2 sheets of cut aparts are on the monthly instructions sheet. So you'll be able to find that there and take a closer look if you would feel better. Otherwise, just follow along. I'll throw out the measurements as I did, and you're good to go. So my goal in class is to basically assemble the structure itself. That means this fully assembled cover and then the binding for all the pages, which is going to be using that wire. After that, the embellishments are going to be up to you to use your creativity to finish these pages however you like to utilize the embellishments, the ribbon, all the things that we've included in your page kit that accompanies the project to help you finish this book in a beautiful way. After that, you can add your pictures. So sometimes it might just depend on what content you plan to put in the book. That may help determine how you will embellish and decorate it. Either way, we're gonna have a good time. Thank you so much for joining me for your homework. I hope you were successful, and I look forward to seeing you at the final workshop.